In order to understand current educational laws and policies related to individuals with disabilities, it is important to understand its history. The history of special education can be tracked back to 1893, when the Massachusetts Supreme Court upheld the expulsion of a student solely due to poor academic ability. 30 years later, the Wisconsin Supreme Court denied education to a student with cerebral palsy. Back then, it was an accepted belief that students with disabilities were best kept away from the public. The right to public education for students with disabilities began with the court case Brown versus the Board of Education. Although this case addressed racial segregation, it paved the way to equal education to students with disabilities. Despite new rights such as the right to public education, increased funding, increased training for educational programs, school districts still had the right to decide whether they wanted to participate in programs for special education. To prevent any school from excluding students with disabilities from any kind of program, Congress passed Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. As late as 1975, students with disabilities were still being excluded or they were being inappropriately educated. Knowing that special education needed to be changed, President Ford signed the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, which is now known as the Individuals Disabilities Act, or IDEA. This law, however, focused on access to education, not the quality. Courts could decide what appropriate education meant. By 1990, many amendments had been added to IDEA. Amendments added additional fundings, additional service for children ages 3 to 5. They added traumatic brain injury and autism to the disability categories. However, none of these amendments address low accountability or low expectations. Amendments then were shifted from providing access to providing meaningful programs to students with disabilities, such as requirements of writing measurable goals, measuring progress, and parental involvement, and mandatory reporting to parents. To address accountability, Congress passed No Child Left Behind, which required schools to participate in assessments and close the gap between students at risk. With time, the requirements of this act became unrealistic and impractical. It also brought up the challenges that came with providing proper education to children with disabilities. Knowing that a new law was necessary, the Obama administration worked to create a new law. On December 10, 2015, Obama signed the Every Student Succeeds Act. Under this new law, students now can receive accommodations on testing. States can get rid of any unnecessary testing, and instead of penalizing a school for needing improvement, schools will now receive more funding to make those improvements. Additionally, new laws require that schools involve you, the parent, or family member in this educational process. As a parent or family, you have rights to your child's education. For example, under IDEA, parents have the right to ask for an evaluation, a reevaluation, and the right to be part of the team that decides what services your child will receive. You have additional rights under the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which gives you the right to request your child's records, request any corrections to those records, and decide who can see those records. These laws, however, only apply to schools that receive certain kinds of funding. If your child attends a public school that does not receive this type of funding, this law does not apply. Although special education has come a long way, we have to move forward to ensure that your child always receives the best education. It is important that you stay up to date with current trends. Often parents will say that it's difficult to navigate this world of special education, but you don't have to be alone. There are several ways to stay up to date and advocate for your child. For example, you can visit parentsupportarizona.com, which offers education, local resources, and supports that families need to navigate this special education system. Raising special kids is another great source. It's a center in Phoenix that offers programs, trainings, and local resources to families with special needs. The Arizona Department of Education is another great way to stay current with policies or relevant information. And of course, you can always reach out to your local school district or special education teacher.